Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Q&Play, our monthly Q&A series where I answer your questions in a rambly, unscripted format. The first question comes from Frumius Jabberwocky 865. My god, that's an amazing username. What is the most clinically insane character concept you've ever had to DM or play alongside in a party? I'm talking could only be thought up while on drugs kind of builds. First and foremost, while playing Dungeons & Dragons, I'm usually drinking, or maybe taking a puff of a little something something, and I will say that I think my campaign is perfectly normal. You just need to do it in moderation. Loosen yourself up a bit. It's not that crazy. But anyway, what kind of insane character concepts have I seen? Well, I will say that for the most part, my players come up with fairly standard character concepts that fit well into my world. My games are not super serious by any means, but they're not, comedy shows. So the parties I run for with my home game, they're usually just characters that will fit into your standard Dungeons & Dragons party. I will say that during my first campaign, we were all new, so our bard, he just was playing Bob Dylan, named Bob Dylan, straight up. The picture that we use as a token was a young illustration of Bob Dylan. So, I don't know, maybe that's insane to you, but for us, it just quickly became a normal thing. Bob Dylan's in this world, and he's a medieval bard with a flying sword. Awesome. I don't play D&D much as a player. I just don't really have that time, though I am going to try to do that come October. So, hey, maybe I'll have some insane character concepts for you then. But right now, yeah, Bob Dylan's the craziest I've ever directly interacted with. Now, ones that I've heard of, obviously, there's plenty from RPG horror stories, but in terms of ones I've heard from in real life, I think the craziest I've heard was somebody who tried to use D&D Destiny's Titan class in base Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. That's not the crazy that you're probably looking for. That's just the crazy stupid of somebody who doesn't know how homebrew works and doesn't understand that D&D Destiny is a rewrite, not just a homebrew module. So yeah, that was bad. I'm sure that campaign went great. It was actually one of the first personal horror stories I ever talked about this channel. I think I talked about it in my 20th video way back. But yeah, there you go. Hope that satisfied your curiosity. Next question comes from evjamaranth. Have you ever given a name to something that everyone seems to like or laugh along with, and only then do you realize that they are laughing because it's an innuendo? I have done that with the name of a maul wielded by my first ever characters in my first ever D&D campaign, only to realize a whole 3 years later, after the fact, that the other players were laughing because it was named Meat Beater. It looked like a meat tenderizer, okay? I can't really say that's happened to me. My players don't really do any sort of innuendos, and I don't think I've ever introduced one into the campaign. Not that I can think of off the top of my head. But I will say that sometimes there's some sort of joke that's going around that I don't really get until much later. For example, in a game I was running with some YouTubers, Kalia Solfera was in that campaign alongside another player character, and they were playing out some kind of sibling relationship, this NPC and this player character, but one of the other players in the party, she thought it was a romantic relationship, so she kept on, nudging Kalia, or me playing Kalia, asking questions about her brother figure, and I didn't really get it until she straight up just blurted out, oh, why don't they kiss already? And Kalia just awkwardly looks at this player and goes, he's a guy. And I'm gay. I didn't frame the moment the best because I really did not know what to say. I was trying to act as her, but I feel like there were 1,000 better or funnier lines I could have said in that moment. But I think that's the closest I could get to what you're talking about there. Miscommunication that became a joke that I could have taken advantage of, and I really just didn't. Because that player, I thought she was playing off something, but she just genuinely thought that this brother and sister duo were genuinely a couple. Anyway, next up, we've got a question from Don Johnson, 9320. Would you say mind flayers are the best D&D Lovecraft thing, or is there a better one in D&D lore? Okay, mind flayers are referential to Lovecraft, but stripped to the studs, they're not really great Lovecraftian creatures, or at least they're not the type of Lovecraftian creatures that I really enjoy. I don't know much about D&D lore, so I'm just gonna say that up top, but I think that aboleths are better D&D Lovecraft analogs. Aboleths are much more powerful than mind flayers. They fit the old god archetype much better than mind flayers do. Mind flayers, if they were to fit into Lovecraft, it would be something like the star spawn of Cthulhu, like the minions of a greater thing. But honestly, mind flayers as an entity, as organisms, they are very, very fleshed out in Dungeons & Dragons, which kind of defeats the Lovecraftian purpose. Stuff that is truly Lovecraftian are creatures that are usually unexplainable, that have not a lot of lore about them, that are filled with mystery. Lovecraft's whole thing is fear of the unknown, and frankly, as dungeon masters and players, you can learn so much about mind flayers. Like, there's pages upon pages explaining their exact biology, how they reproduce, their culture, their goals, their society, everything. All of that is explainable, and that makes mind flayers not really great from a Lovecraftian standpoint. They're not unknown at all. In fact, they're very known. They're super, super known. By the way, I'm not trying to say mind flayers are bad. I'm saying that from a Lovecraftian standpoint, they do not fit the bill. I'd say Aboleths are the better Lovecraft analog, but honestly, I don't think in Dungeons & Dragons, Lovecraft is perfectly represented in any of these references. They are referential, but at the end of the day, the writers are doing their own thing with illithids, with Aboleths. They're not trying to perfectly recreate what made Lovecraft scary. If you want my advice on how to make Lovecraftian entities in your game, number one, limit information. Not all the information needs to be communicated with your frickin' players. If you explain painfully, in painstaking detail, what kind of creature it is, then it's no longer Lovecraftian. It loses that mysticism. If you want a D&D example that I've run live on this channel, the friend downstairs is a Lovecraftian entity that is left largely unexplained. This limited amount of information makes the creature so much more terrifying than the creature that is painfully explained over and over and over again. Another big thing is that Lovecraftian entities do not need to be malevolent. Illithids and Aboleths are often seen as Lovecraftian entities, partially because they're evil, they're trying to kill you. But a big thing about Lovecraft is something like Cthulhu isn't really antagonistic. It just is. We're literally like gnats to it. We're not even like mosquitoes or flies or insects that you would smush with your hand. We're literally like microscopic organisms that Cthulhu does not even bother to notice. Destiny does this really well. The Destiny franchise has Lovecraftian entities known as the Nine. They are a brilliant example of modern, weird, eldritch, abstract horror that I just love. The Nine are weird, but they're not outwardly hostile, at least not yet. It's just the fact that the Nine are so potent and powerful, so all-encompassing in the universe that scares you. Because while they're not trying to kill us right now, what if they wanted to? The only reason we're okay is because they don't care enough about us to kill us. Yet, that sense of hopelessness, that sense of smallness, the vastness of the Nine compared to the itty-bitty conflict of the player characters in Destiny, that right there is what I love about Lovecraft. The Illithid are cool, by the way. This isn't me trying to say they're terrible. I like Illithid a lot, especially from an aesthetic standpoint. I mean, they look great. And I do have Illithid in my homebrew universe, but they're not exactly like the Illithid in D&D. I've rewritten them a lot to fit more into my vision of what a Lovecraftian entity would look like in my world. Maybe one day I'll talk about that, but yeah, that's my opinion on whether Mind Flayers are Lovecraftian or not. They're not really, though they do look it, and I think that that's okay. Not everything needs to be referential to eldritch horror, especially since not every campaign's gonna cater to that sort of thing. If you want Lovecraftian horror, though, hope those tips helped you out. Alright, question from blazethedead. I find my son chewing on Legos from time to time. Is there a less delicious building block on the market?
Excuse me, Lego is supposed to be used as an adjective, not a noun.
No, I'm kidding. Anyway, I will say, if what you mean by less delicious is bad, then I will say I am not a fan of mega constructs, mega blocks. They have great sets, but I don't know what happened with a couple of their recent builds, but my god are they unstable. First and foremost, a lot of Mega Construct builds are just not that good. They have a lot of molded pieces that are kind of just used for the builds they're used in. You can't really use them in much else. It's hard to mix and match them, which is why I and many others prefer Lego. Also, the bricks are definitely of a lesser quality. So I have the Arcadia class jump ship. It's a Mega Block set, and it falls apart constantly. And it's not the only one. I have to super glue Mega Construct sets on a regular basis because, God, they just fall apart so easily. Like, that Arcadia class jump ship never leaves the shelf where it is, because if that thing is so much as grazed by a stray object, it falls apart instantly. It's super glued together, and even that can't hold it in place. It's so irritating. So yeah, I'm not a Mega Constructs, Mega Blocks, Mega fan. I haven't been for a very long time. If you guys remember Creo though, Creo is an old Hasbro building block. Those somehow sucked even more. I had a few Creo builds back in the day, and yeah, none of those have survived. Lego, though, those things just keep on going. Quality stuff, man. Quality stuff. Question from Infinite Singularity 8477. How do you prep your sessions, and how long do you feel like it takes? So I start generally with prepping through my whiteboard, and keep in mind that when I prep, I usually just prep whenever. I'm not exactly sitting down and dedicating like, okay, now I'm going to work for 4 hours in a session. No, I just prep whenever I have the time. So really the timing is looser. I start with my whiteboard, like I said, and up there I put general ideas for the whole campaign, not necessarily for the latest session. My whiteboard right now is dedicated to locations that my party are going to be going to. I just want to make sure that places on the map have names, so that when my party goes there and asks, what's this place called? I have an answer for them. Then I move on to notes. I run through the bullet points, and usually these are just what I think is going to happen during the session, and 99% of the time I'm right. Me and my friends think a lot alike, and therefore I'm not usually caught off guard by their choices. Sometimes though, bad stuff happens, bad rolls happen, and sometimes I need to reframe. There are alternate possibilities that I cover throughout my notes. After that, relevant gameplay stuff. Stat blocks are added into the note sheet, maps are added into my VTT, and after that, the flavor. Stuff like sound effects and music being added in. These are just as important. This whole process in total probably takes around session time, so maybe 2 to 3 hours, which is about the length that I play. Alongside that, I sprinkle general prep, making random miscellaneous magical items that I'm pretty sure I'll use in the future, or making tokens for NPCs that are going to show up in the campaign, or monsters that I see in Flea Mortals. I usually make all of these in advance, just whenever I get the time. General prep is just as important as the initial session prep for the actual game you're going to be running that week. Question from Easiest CC 6451. How would you rule gunslingers and artificers not being able to insta-kill any humanoids with their ranged weapons? Also, have there been any fictional stories that you've cried to? The bullet grazes off the shoulder, or the shot glances off the armor. It's nothing crazy. My friends are not nerds about what kind of blows would kill or not kill, and they don't really care when I say that the bullet grazes someone's shoulder and leaves them with a trickle of blood. Suspend disbelief. It's a D&D game. But anyway, fictional stories that I've cried to, okay, I don't know why, but my friends think it's shocking that I cry to anything. Like, whenever I tell them, like, oh, this made me cry, they always respond with gasps of amazement, as if it's insane that I would react with emotion to something, which I don't know why they think that. But anyway, fictional stories I've cried to a lot, actually. Nothing like bawling my eyes out, but yeah, tears well up every now and then. Recent examples would be God of War Ragnarok, when Kratos is telling his final story to Atreus. That really got to me. I mean, I was pretty certain I knew how the game would end, but some of those final speeches during the Realms at War portion of God of War Ragnarok, man, they really got to me. Christopher Judge is excellent as Kratos, and his monologues are so emotionally charged. Another big thing that made me cry recently was, only a few weeks ago, I watched the finale of The Owl House, the final 3 episodes, aka what was basically an Owl House movie, and I was shocked by how much I cried throughout that film. I mean, my God, those 3 specials got to me. And usually I cry when I'm invested in the story for a long period of time. Like Red Dead Redemption 2. I mean, come on, who didn't cry when Arthur Morgan passed on from this world? His final stand was so emotionally charged and amazing. And I mean, a lot of people cried tears at that ending. But I also played as Arthur for hours and hours and hours upon hours. It took me like a month to beat that game. So yeah, it was a really emotional moment when Arthur Morgan died. However, with the Owl House, I only watched that show for like 3 days. I mean, it's only 2 seasons in a movie, so it's not that long. So when I got to the ending, it hit me so much harder than I was expecting. Like, that's not normal and speaks to the quality of this story. If you're an Owl House fan, you're wondering what moments especially got to me. Camilla telling Luce that a good witch always needs her hat. Oh my God, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about that moment. The moment when Flapjack sacrifices themselves for Hunter. Luce returning to the Boiling Isles as a titan to kick Bellows' butt. Oh my God, that was epic. And what was so awesome is these tears that were flowing down my face, they weren't tears of sadness. I wasn't sad for the most part. They were tears of hype, dude. I love this show. I mean, it had a profound effect on me and came at a time in my life where I felt great for the first time in a long time. And I'm happy to say that even though I can't say the Owl House is responsible for that, the Owl House is something that's going to mark a change in mentality for me. I mean, I don't know if I want to say this during a Q&A, but man, I feel really good. And I don't know, maybe the Owl House just came at the right time for me and just boosted my mood all the more. I feel great, guys, and it's like the best I've felt in a really long time. And the Owl House and its characters, maybe they just helped that all the more, and that's why I was crying such tears of joy throughout the finale of an incredible story. So yeah, I do cry at stories, but I will say that the Owl House is probably the most surprised I've been at how emotional I got. If you want to channel that sort of emotion through your games, it is really hard. I have tried it myself, and I have succeeded. Me and my players have shed tears at our D&D table many times. It's mostly during big emotional moments, but really, the thing you need to do is just make your players care. Give them characters that they care about. Not just their characters, but the characters around them. My players really love the NPCs of their campaign. The people that journey alongside them. It's a very BioWare mentality if you're a big fan of Mass Effect or Dragon Age. The companions that go alongside the party are just as important to my players as the party itself. And so seeing how their stories end alongside their own stories as player characters, I mean, all that combines to very emotional moments. And also keep in mind, not all tears need to be sad. Some tears can be happy. A happy ending can also bring joy to the eyes. And you know what? I think that's pretty cool. All right, there you go. There's today's episode of Q&Play. I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you did, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of our content, then you can check out our Tabletop Tavern Tips series. We just released an episode covering the RPG horror story of Taz's graduation. That's linked in the cards. And while you're there, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content right as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own questions or thoughts, go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment Reborn to reference the game I'm playing in the background and to let me know you made it to the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you all next time. Farewell.